You owe $6,000. You pay $150, and somehow your brain feels better. But almost none of the problem disappeared. So what exactly did that payment remove? The debt or the anxiety? That question changes everything. Because minimum payments do something psychologically clever. They make a large threat feel temporarily small. And once the threat feels smaller, we relax, even when the balance barely moves. Most people think this is simple mathematics. It is not. It is a story about attention, fear, and relief. Your statement shows several numbers. The total balance looks dangerous. The minimum payment looks manageable. Your eyes notice both, but your mind clings to the smaller one. That smaller number becomes an anchor. An anchor quietly shapes what feels reasonable. Now, paying slightly more feels responsible. Paying double feels unusually aggressive. But both decisions began from the same anchor, not from the full debt. That is the first psychological trick. The minimum does not reduce the size of debt. It reduces the size of the decision, and our brains love smaller decisions. Large problems create mental tension, while small tasks create emotional order and restore a feeling of control. Instead of asking one difficult question, we replace it with an easier one. How do I escape this debt? That question becomes something much smaller. Can I make this month's payment? The second question feels practical. It also keeps the first question hidden. This is how survival thinking begins. One deadline replaces the entire financial picture. One successful payment replaces meaningful progress, and the brain rewards completion. The warning disappears. The account becomes current. A confirmation message appears. The due date moves forward. Everything looks handled, but handled is not the same as solved. That difference is easy to miss. The payment completed a task. It did not necessarily change the direction. This is why minimum payments feel satisfying. They create the emotional experience of progress, even when the financial progress is tiny. Think about that for a second. The brain often prefers completed actions over unfinished goals. A checked box feels safe. An open problem feels threatening. So the minimum payment becomes a monthly checked box. Pay it. Feel relief. Move on. Then repeat. Eventually, the debt stops feeling like an emergency. It starts feeling like a subscription. At first, the balance shocks you. Months later, it becomes familiar. And familiarity changes emotion. What once felt dangerous becomes background noise. Not because the debt became harmless, because your nervous system adapted. This is one of the strangest human patterns. We can normalize almost anything that repeats quietly. A monthly balance, a recurring fee, a constant overdraft, a permanent feeling of being behind. The mind learns to live beside it. And once something feels normal, urgency disappears. That is when debt becomes psychologically sticky. Not when it scares you, when it stops surprising you. But there is another layer. Minimum payments protect cash today. Paying more creates immediate pain. Paying less pushes pain forward. The future cost feels distant, but today's money feels immediate, useful, and emotionally difficult to surrender. This is present bias. Our brains value relief now more than freedom later. So keeping extra cash feels intelligent, even when tomorrow becomes more expensive. The card quietly offers a trade. Comfort today, pressure later. And most people choose the feeling they can touch. Future interest has no face. Today's grocery bill does. That is why the minimum can feel compassionate. It leaves room in the bank account. It lowers panic. It helps the month survive. And sometimes that is genuinely necessary. Not everyone paying the minimum is careless. Some people are protecting rent, food, or medicine. Sometimes the minimum is a lifeline. But a lifeline becomes dangerous when it becomes permanent, because survival tools are not always escape tools. Then comes another psychological illusion. You make a payment. Your available credit increases, and suddenly, it feels like money returned. But nothing was earned. Income did not rise. The card simply reopened borrowing space. You did not recover cash. You recovered permission to borrow again. That distinction matters, because available credit can feel like available money. And once that happens, the loop restarts. Spend, pay the minimum. Regain credit, spend again. The balance survives because the cycle feels normal. There is also an identity problem. Many people proudly say, "I always pay on time," and that is genuinely better than missing payments. But the statement can reward the wrong identity. You begin feeling financially responsible because you completed every monthly requirement, yet the balance may remain almost unchanged. The mind protects the story. I am disciplined. I handle my bills. I am not in trouble. Those beliefs reduce shame. They can also reduce curiosity, because asking deeper questions threatens the identity. Why is this debt still here? Why does the balance barely fall? Why am I paying without escaping? Those questions feel uncomfortable. So the minimum payment protects more than cash. It protects the story we tell ourselves. And human beings defend stories fiercely, especially stories about responsibility. Now notice the deeper pattern. The minimum payment solves emotion before finance. It removes the warning. It lowers the anxiety. It restores a sense of control. It delays the difficult decision. Because the feeling improves immediately, the system appears effective even when the balance is barely changing. But relief can be misleading. A painkiller can reduce pain. It does not remove the injury. The minimum payment works similarly. It can calm the financial nervous system without healing the financial wound. So how do we break the spell? Not with shame. Not with complicated formulas. Start by changing the question. Do not ask only, what is required? Ask, what would meaningfully change the balance? That creates a new anchor, a new starting point, a new definition of progress. Then separate 3 different payment modes. The required payment keeps the account current. The survival payment protects you during difficult months. The escape payment actually attacks the balance. These are not the same thing, and confusing them creates years of delay. The important question is simple. Which mode are you using right now? Survival, maintenance, or escape? Once you see the difference, the statement changes because the minimum stops looking like the destination. It becomes only the floor, and the balance becomes the real scoreboard. That is the hidden psychology. The smallest number controls attention. The confirmation message creates relief. The reopened credit feels like recovered money. The repeated balance becomes normal, and the identity of responsibility remains protected, all while the largest number stays alive. So the minimum payment is not powerful because it is small. It is powerful because it feels complete. It turns a frightening problem into a manageable ritual, and rituals are easy to repeat. That is why your brain loves the minimum payment. It buys calm, it buys time, it buys the feeling of control, but it may not buy freedom. Once you understand that difference, the statement can no longer speak for your mind. You start asking a better question. Not, what is the least I can pay? But, what payment changes my future? Because the balance does not respond to relief. It responds to what actually disappears. That is how the smallest number can keep the largest number alive. But this trap becomes even stronger when available credit starts feeling like income.